I guess I will call the meeting to order at 6:04. Let's see, do we start with a roll call?
Sure.
Okay.
I can help with that if you give me just one moment.
Or I can.
Oh, you have it
go
right
from here.
Yes.
Okay, so first up, Christina.
Christina, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm present.
Great. And Alisa?
Present.
Okay, Lorna?
Present.
Helen?
Helen is not able, I heard from her, she's not able to join us tonight, so she's an excused absent.
Okay, Lucrecia?
I haven't heard from Lucrecia.
Okay, and Ray?
Here.
Okay, Tony?
I have not heard from Tony other than was planning on joining us.
Okay, and Shay?
Also, she was planning on joining us.
Okay, and then Preeti, I'm here, and Kelly.
Yes.
Okay, let's see, next is public comments.
Yes, we do have a couple of public comments. On one end, we have our community members from the Baha'is of Issaquah would like to share a few things with the board. So I'm going to invite them here. Just in time.
Well, good evening, everybody. And it's our pleasure to, like we promised, we're planning another community social, community building. And we have the invites for you, both hard copy and of course electronic that we're sending to Monica, that kind of thing. So all of you out there, actually Ray's been collaborating actively with us, kind of in support and brainstorming on ideas and format. So it's very much a public invitation it's public-private, I don't know. It's for the public, for your friends, your family members, your colleagues, kind of. And it really is a great opportunity to just engage in a very open, welcoming way. All people of all ages. I know we're really working on teenagers joining us as kids, grandchildren, whatever, nieces and nephews. So please feel welcome. The theme is everyone has a role to play in community building. Share your thoughts and words in art and music. We did that the first time. Everybody enjoyed expressing their thoughts in a painting, or we're thinking in a skit, dialogue, music, play something, not required, but entertaining and kind of thoughtful and soulful, that kind of thing, artful. So we could hand these out. I'll leave them with Monica, but we could just, because the idea is take at least 3 each. So you could share with friends, family that you'd like to invite. Ray, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I certainly would. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I have the speaker that I've been manipulating. So Ted and Farah and Saba, I see you in the background. I just wanted to share with my fellow board members what a tremendous opportunity it's been to, one, get to know the 3 of you better, and even more important was getting the opportunity to participate in one of your community events. I thought it was enlightening and heartwarming experience, and I hope to mimic the same process for your next meeting. I know we're going to get some time together to collaborate on that, but for my fellow board members, if you have the opportunity to attend yourself, or if you can pass along the invite to fellow community members or friends, I highly encourage it. The event's a great way to communicate and to really express how we not only feel individually, but to have a dialogue, a thoughtful dialogue with others around us on really important topics that I think affect our homes, communities, our families, our children. So again, thank you to Ted, Saba, and Farah for the opportunity. I look forward to working with you closely. A lot of encouragement out to the board to have you join us or get the message out there for the events that they're planning. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Leave most of these with you, okay?
Okay, I'll share with Scott as well.
And then do we have anyone else teed up for public comment?
So we had received via email feedback, an email from a community member that was shared with you all. And I know that as a board, you did not have a chance to respond. We had an email response from Lisa, what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna summarize the email that we received from the community member, and then I know that perhaps you as board members would like to make a couple of comments as well. So the feedback came from a community member named Steve Pereira. And so he was sharing that after watching the equity board meeting recently, he found himself bothered, concerned, and disillusioned that the equity board has opted to choose the option of meeting remotely instead of meeting in person. So he was just disagreeing with the board's decision and recommendation, and was sharing that he preferred to, since the board is serving the public, was for the public benefit. And so he shared additional thoughts regarding that. So just the disagreement that the board decided to meet virtually, and so was asking the board to reconsider. And so you all have that email. And as I was sharing, typically public comments, you as a board can acknowledge them and accept them. It's usually, it's not a dialogue, so you don't necessarily need to respond. However, if you do have a response, you can certainly do that, and the meeting is recorded for sure. So community members can view it and see it later. And so with that, I don't know, Lisa, if you would like to share your comments that you had in the email, or if other board members have anything that you would like to share, again, it's up to you as a board.
Yes, Lisa.
I would just say that I think the board had some pretty vigorous conversation about the topic last time. And if we get additional public comment, that it might be helpful if he's able to further explain his comments. I think that the board tried to consider all aspects of inclusivity and tried to make sure that while we are meeting publicly and hosting the recordings publicly and trying to make sure that the public is 100% aware of what we're doing, whether we meet virtually or in person, and certainly we're encouraging in-person meeting for everyone who can do it. So it might be helpful if we did receive additional feedback to understand if there was more that that we should consider.
Thank you. And I think, thank you so much, Lisa. And my question to you as a board, you all have seen the email communication and Lisa's draft. Would you all feel comfortable with sharing that email with the community member? Or would you have a preference as a board?
I'm fine with it. I think Elisa's response summarized our conversation and our feelings. I think there was a good discussion, and I know that I was questioning about having remote or remote meetings, but I really listened in listening to the other board members. I realized that we do, as an equity group, we do need to have options to make sure that other members or community members are able to attend, because not everyone has the ability to attend in person. And I think COVID has taught us that Zoom meetings or people coming in remotely is a viable way to work. And in the business community, that is definitely something that is ongoing practice. And unless it becomes a barrier and we can demonstrate how it's a barrier, there's no reason to stop.
And I see Ray has his hand up. Ray?
Yes, hi. I was quite honestly on the fence about this one. And I have to say, Elisa, you brought up some tremendously powerful arguments for keeping us where we are. But at one point, I would like to see you in person, just from a personal desire to do that. So I think we do have the option, but I think I for one would appreciate having you in front of me at a collaboration at one point. So if there's a chance to do that, and we have to realize how we were established. We were established as a board that can meet remotely, so we can't change that. It's just our personal choice. But when it comes to really, if you think about our work environments, we live in a virtual world. I work with virtual team members every day. We have the option of turning our cameras off. We have the options of joining in person, but just because of the distance, it's often challenging to do that. But it's our choice. So I agree that it's an option. But if at one point there's an opportunity for you to come in person, I think I speak for the others, and we would greatly appreciate your presence. Oops.
Thanks, Ray. I would just say that unfortunately, honestly, if we weren't doing these meetings remotely, I wouldn't have been able to participate for the last year. I literally stopped working just minutes before the meeting, switched from one computer to the other, and have barely gotten up to have a drink of water. So I personally have been really grateful to have been able to participate, and I know that's not the case for everyone, but everybody has different circumstances.
Is there anyone else?
Thank you, board members. Yes, thank you. That's what I was just gonna say. We do have someone who called in from a phone number starting with 206, and the last 2 digits are 40. I'm gonna unmute you. Good evening. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, this is Huma. My name is Huma Mohibullah, and I live in downtown Issaquah. Monica, I met you the other day. I came by your office, and thank you for sending me the link so that I could attend this.
Oh, you're very welcome. So nice to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. Good evening. We are right in the public comment section of our meeting. Would you like to address the board? Do you have a public comment, or would you like to just listen in to the conversation tonight?
I will agree with the last person who said that they appreciate having these remote options to attend. Like them, I too sometimes find it hard to find time to get a drink of water. So yeah, my only public comment is affirming the need for remote participation. Thank you for providing it.
Yes, thank you so much, and thank you for being here. So very nice meeting you last week.
Thank you. And I see Christina has her hand up. Please go ahead.
Así es. Yo quiero comentar que, así como dice Alisa, es importante que sepamos más el contexto de por qué, o sea, el motivo de su comentario de esta persona, de Steve, porque al final de cuentas mantenemos mucha tecnología en uso. Generamos un video que se mantiene en la web después de que estamos aquí reunidos. Entonces, para el público, si ellos no están presentes en la reunión, no veo mucho impacto el que vean el video de nosotros en privado, digo, de nosotros en persona o online. Entonces, quisiera entender más.
So I agree with Alyssa. I'd like more information that's supporting Steve's arguments. I mean, we're so used to technology. The meetings are all available on the website. I feel like if the person isn't actually going to be here in person, then what does it matter if he watches the video of it afterward, or if we're online or in person?
Thank you, Christina. And I see Lucrecia has joined us. Would you like to comment, Lucrecia?
Yeah, so when I read the email from the person who sent it, I believe his name is Steve, what I came away with was that maybe there was a misunderstanding in that maybe he interpreted to mean that we were meeting outside in private and not in the public eye. And so I think that to appease that concern, my interpretation of the concern is to emphasize the fact that even when we are remote, we do not meet unless the public is notified, and we meet in this public forum, which is electronic and or in person. There are some people in the room right now who are in person, and those of us who are at home. And so I want to make sure that the public understands that even though we are remote does not mean we're meeting remote outside of the public eye. Remote means electronically, and that our meetings are announced ahead of time. And if there are meetings where we meet outside of the public eye, that there is never quorum, and that we also adhere to the policies and legislation that says that we can't discuss shop. And that issue came up on a different commission when I was part of the Commission with Human Services. We had a social gathering where there could have been quorum, but we are all adults. We all hold these positions, the volunteer, very seriously, and we do follow the law. And we all agree to and adhere to not talking shop. So I just want to, bring that to the attention of anyone who is watching and anyone who has that sort of concern. Thank you.
That's a great point, Lucrecia. And Elisa, see your hands up again?
I just wanted to add into what Lucrecia said. Great comments that Lucrecia made. In addition, that there is always an in-person component. And so even if we have members of the community who are not comfortable with technology and who would like to come from the public and be present in the room, that's available to them. It's not like we're, now that we're not under the COVID restrictions, it's not that we're having a meeting that doesn't have an in-person component that people can't join.
Thank you. So I think, I know Monica had kicked off this part of our conversation with wondering if we would just want to forward Elisa's email to Steve, or whether, I'm hearing we may want to add a little bit more based on some of Lucrecia's comments as well, just trying to clarify if there was a misunderstanding around remote equaling private versus public. So how would you propose?
Yeah, so I'm happy I took notes to summarize the conversation, add that to Elisa's draft, and then respond on behalf of the board, if that's okay with everyone, including the board.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you so much, board members. And that concludes the public comment section. We did not receive other public comments or interest from public other than you met our resident Uma, who's on the call tonight with us.
Okay, so moving on to the next agenda topic, which is the approval of minutes from the last meeting. And so it's in the board packet. Do we want to take maybe 2 minutes to do a quick review, and then we'll move to approve or addend or edit? Okay, this is feeling like a really long 2 minutes. It might have been 1 minute, but I'm hoping people had enough time to review. Does anyone need more time? Okay.
And I want to, I'm noticing something. I think we continue to have some technical issues. Board members, we cannot see you on the big screen. I can see on my computer. I know that most of you have your cameras on. So it's just a little bit difficult for those in the room to see you. So if you don't mind just either raising your hands or acknowledging verbally, since the room cannot really see your head nods or head shakes.
Thank you.
So, but yes, I didn't hear anyone. So I think.
Yes, I reviewed it and approved. This is Ray.
Okay.
I
So,
approve, so.
Great.
So perhaps also a question could be anyone who has any edits to the minutes?
Ms. Lucretia?
I'm so sorry. I was just trying to give a thumbs up and then never mind.
Okay, so I think just to follow up to Monica's question, does anyone have any edits they would like to make? Okay,
So hearing none, yes.
Okay,
Then hearing none, you can consider the minutes approved.
okay, and hearing no changes requested, let's approve the minutes. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So now we're moving on to the next agenda item, which is led by Monica on the Capital Improvement Plan Board Summit Report Out.
Led by Monica and the equity board members who attended the summit. Thank you. So I think this is just a brief report out for those members who were not able to participate in the board summit on February 16. As you may recall, for that first time actually, for the city, on February 16, the city organized a joint meeting between 4 boards, the equity board, the environmental board, the park board, and the transportation advisory board met jointly to discuss and provide input on the city's capital improvement plan for the 2024-2029 process. And so the boards had a chance to listen to a presentation on the process of creating the capital improvement plan, and the board also had an opportunity to provide feedback on the proposed criteria that was created by the city administrator, Andrea Snyder, and our finance director, Robert Hamoud. And so that's just a brief overview. I'm not sure if board members have any specific information that they would like to share. If not, I'm happy to read some of the comments that were provided. But from the equity board, I know that Pretty was there, Kelly was there, Helen was there, Lucrecia was there, and Christina participated. So I see, Lucrecia, I see your hand up. Would you like to jump in?
Sure. I'm not sure what your notes state, Monica, but one of the things that I walked away with that I felt was very powerful, and if people have time to watch the video that was recorded, was that when we were given an assignment to break off into our groups and process what we were being tasked to do, that we also discussed among our group how some of the wording in some of the other tasks was problematic. And one of the things that I walked away with was just how relieved I was to see that those groups could identify the problematic language and could redirect it in such a way that it was obvious to me, at least, and from the discussion that I recall, it was obvious that they were applying an equity lens and or using the equity tool to actually rethink and revamp the wording that we are being asked to implement. And that to me was a very hopeful result, because I feel like sometimes it can be very easy to just kind of, brush over some of the language that is used in a lot of this policy making that we influence. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lucrecia. Did anyone else who was attending have any comments to share? Okay. I can review some of the feedback we gave. I know Monica has some of the notes as well. But when we met in our smaller group and reviewed the criteria, some of the comments we noted were that there were several categories of criteria to review the plans, and I'm trying to find them right now. But okay, so some of the criteria, and it's in the board or meeting packet, was around like legal mandate, community priorities, conformity to strategic plan goals, climate resiliency, city resource management, replacement or capital maintenance of existing infrastructure, equity, and long-standing commitments. And so one of the, I think the main comment that sticks with me is that equity is a component of each of the other criteria. And so while it's its own standalone criteria, it's actually should be in some way folded into all of the criteria and how things are reviewed. So I think that was one takeaway we had as a group. Another one was the criteria of longstanding commitment felt a little problematic because it's unclear how those commitments were made, but there's this commitment to uphold those commitments. And so I think we requested that it be more defined a little bit more clearly. I think we wanted some reflection on some of the longer term plans, which were inputs into the capital planning process and whether they adequately factored in equity considerations and community engagement and the impact of the COVID pandemic. And there were some other items, but I feel like my notes aren't very good, but those were some comments.
I think you covered, I think you talked a little bit about some othering language that was included, perhaps. So just even just some of the language in
the equity criteria, it was other.
And I'm sorry, I was also a little bit distracted because I heard back from Shay, but I'm not sure if you touched on the equity criteria being a separate criteria or just being embedded in all of that. You did, so yeah, sorry about that. I think that's Kelly, do you have other things to add?
Not to this. I have another thought, which I sent in an email, and that is particularly the last criteria. I mean, I completely agree with we should be part of each, not separate criteria, but I am extremely concerned about the added criteria that we weren't even supposed to talk about, being just a way to override any type of equity in anything, right? It's an override clause for using a system that a set of criteria that they're using, and then they add this criteria where the board can just put anything at a higher priority. And so, to me, we should step up and do more. We should tell the board, we should tell the council that this is concerning.
Thank you, Kelly and Preeti and board members and Lucrecia. I think I have a little bit of added information about next steps and ways to provide feedback. And so then next you can decide as a board on what you would like to do as far as next steps. So Deputy City Administrator Snyder has put together a memo to be sent out to all of you on how that includes a summary of the feedback that you all provided and how they plan on incorporating the feedback that you received. Currently, that's going to be sent for translations, and as soon as we have the translations, then we'll email those to you. And so in terms of next step, the administration will work with the internal leadership team to incorporate all of that and create a draft for the capital improvement plan. And then they plan on returning to you all as in boards in April before going to City Council with a draft of the capital improvement plan. So in terms of you providing feedback at this point, probably the most helpful would be you can certainly provide feedback and I can take notes and we can do it via email, or you can do a more formal feedback. Probably the best way though at this point, since it's the administration working on it, is to send the feedback directly to the Deputy City Administrator and the Finance Director or to the Mayor. Certainly you can send it to City Council also, but the draft is not the city council will not see the draft until after it will come back to you in April. So it might be a little bit too soon to send it to council, I guess. But so certainly you do have options, and Andrea called me this afternoon actually, and she's very open, and if you have additional feedback, they would like to hear from you for sure. So that is, and actually I do have the draft memo here with me, and I want to see if there is some language in the memo that refers to the long-standing commitment criteria that you mentioned. And with your permission, it's not too long. Can I just read from that? So it says, we heard that a couple of the boards thought this criterion was not well defined and could conflict with our equity and transparency goals, and that it would interfere with efforts to hold ourselves accountable to such goals. We also heard concerns about whether long-term priorities still meet current needs in a post-pandemic Issaquah. As City Council wishes to define this further, the City Administration has decided to make no changes to this criterion at this time, but will pass on the feedback of the boards to City Council. So based on, so that
means we need to go to the City Council.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I'm hearing. If we want, and it wouldn't be worthy of us to reach out to the other committees or boards, because it was voiced at least by one other, if not all of them. You know, I'm not remembering well enough, but I know other committees also voiced concern with that, because they also see that their priorities that are important to the Parks and Rec Department is going to also get moved, you know, so.
Yeah, I see, Ray, I see your hand is up. Would you like to comment?
Ray, we cannot hear you.
A couple comments in the question. So thank you for my fellow board members for attending that meeting, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to join. I guess my question is, when the other comment is I have not gone over it in detail, but I trust you, those of you who were there, can you give some specific examples of how an equity lens was not applied to some of the discussion? Just a little more precise examples of what exactly was like hit a nerve with you that didn't have an equity lens on it?
I'll answer that. I don't think that that's what I was saying. If you're talking about this is Kelly, I was trying to say that the criteria for this added criteria for longstanding issues to get inserted into the capital improvement plan was problematic, because it actually overrides the other criteria in order to get there's reasons why these long-term goals have not been completed. And it's because the existing criteria is knocking them out. So when you say the council can then add it, it becomes a single way to change the priority list.
Okay.
And that's why it's problematic from an equity perspective.
And so if I could add one other example, I think, Ray, that addresses your question. And so one of the criteria were community priority. And I think, so there are examples given like the Issaquah Climate Action Plan, Utility Rate Study, Mobility Master Plan. So some of those documents that were created in part from community engagement processes. And so so I think there's some equity considerations upstream of those community priority developments. And so there's an assumption that there was robust, representative, diverse community engagement through those processes, which means that those community priorities represent the full community. But so that's where, you know, we need to be assured, I think, that, you know, tools such as the equity framework have been followed to ensure that those priorities were established and documented through a more mature kind of equity oriented process. So I think that that's another example of how equity seems to feed into a lot of these different criteria and not just as its own standalone criteria.
I see. That's helpful, Pretty. Thank you.
Let's see, did anyone else have their hands raised or want to comment? Chrissy, I had it earlier, but I don't see it.
I did, but you did a great job, Preeti, and covered what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Christina.
Bueno, solamente me gustaría agregar que al final le pregunté a la directora del evento que en qué momento se vería reflejado toda la parte de equidad en la que estamos trabajando y ella me comentó que se vería hasta el 2024, porque pues todo esto que estamos trabajando pues toma tiempo que se implemente, entonces pues para que a partir de ahí tengamos esa noción clara.
I just wanted to mention that afterwards I stuck around and spoke with the director about when all of our comments would actually be implemented, and she told me that it wouldn't be until 2024. So I think that's important to keep in mind as well.
Okay, thank you, Christina. So I think that's when, yeah, the selection criteria would start to be
implemented.
Yeah.
If adopted, yes. So I think the hope is that the capital improvement plan will be adopted by July 1st, and then probably by adopting that, then I assume that those items will go through the budget process to allocate money towards those projects, and then implementation will begin in 2024. So it's the 6-year plan. So with that, board members, my question to you is to seek some sort of consensus from all of you in terms of what would you like to see as next steps. What should the next steps be? So one option, you will receive via email the memo in the upcoming days, most likely, as today is Wednesday, most likely next week, to give us enough time for translations. You can take time to reflect upon that, and then we can either schedule a special meeting, or the next scheduled meeting is a joint meeting with the Human Services Commission. So I don't believe that would be a good time to do it. But the next regular meeting is the first meeting in April, which also might coincide with the Deputy Director Snyder coming actually to meet with you and further discuss, where then perhaps you can provide feedback then and continue, or we can schedule a special meeting if you would like to see something or do something before that.
Yeah, and I believe there was another ask that we didn't have time for, which was maybe to revise the equity criteria statement that's in here. And I know we didn't have time to get to that.
Right. And so there is some work that could be done via email as long as you don't reach consensus. So just doing some legwork done, and then when you come back in the meeting, then just making it easier and quicker, so you don't end up wordsmithing for 2 hours in a meeting. Which you can certainly do, but it's your meeting, so sorry.
Sorry, what was the equity statement?
So this was in the summit packet. I'm just passing it over to Lorna. They had a little summary of each of the criteria. And so they were still, I think that the equity criteria in particular was one of the new ones that they hadn't finalized what that would look like explicitly.
So with that, would you like to wait and read the memo and react to that in providing additional feedback, and then have an opportunity to invite and have then the meeting in April, discuss that and provide further feedback? Does that sound like a good plan? Since it still gives you time, it sounds like prior to this going to City Council. And then, as you said, Kelly, if you still feel after that your feedback was not incorporated, or you feel like you would like to take further action, then you as a board still can decide to perhaps provide further feedback to City Council.
Just as at the end of what you read, it said they weren't gonna work on the longstanding commitment. Am I hearing that correctly?
So they mentioned that they heard your concerns, and then I think at the end, as you said, says, so since City Council wishes, so this comes from City Council, right? We all report to City. So since City Council wishes to define this further, the City Administration has decided to make no changes to this criterion at this time, but will pass on the feedback of the boards to City Council. And I think, again, I think I understand that perception. If City Council asked to further discuss and City Council wanted to make changes, then I don't know that the administration can do anything about it at this point, other than providing the feedback on your behalf.
So
I still think we can, but we'll do that later. Is that what you're gonna say?
okay, well, so I think to summarize, we should plan, I would move to agree to what Monica is proposing, wait for the memo to come out, and then have some agenda time in April to discuss and see if we want to package up our feedback, and maybe have separate comment to share both with the
City staff, city administration.
City staff, administration, and also with City Council, who might be doing their own revisions on that longstanding commitment criteria.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yes.
Thanks, Ray.
Okay. And that's okay with you also, Christina and Lucrecia and Elisa?
Yep. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, I guess let me just do one final check to see if anyone's got any more comments or questions. I'm not seeing anything on Monica's screen, so let's move to the next topic, which is criteria for items needing board input and brainstorming ideas. So discussion led by Monica.
Thank you, board members. Thank you, Priti. Bye-bye. Have a good night. Thank you for being here. So this came up a couple of meetings ago when, as US board, continue to develop and look at how we structure meetings and how we work together, but also how you provide input. As we have more and more requests coming from different departments, rightfully so, I believe Kelly brought it up at one of the meetings on what should we ask for from staff members when they bring an item for discussion. And so on one end, I know that you discussed and you wanted to implement the equity framework that we have. On the other end, I wanted to take a few minutes with you to brainstorm if there's anything else that you would like city staff to bring forward to you. And I wanted to share, with your permission, an example of a report that we are now using when we put together reports and memos for City Council, and wanted to use that as a starting point. Give me just a moment to pull it up and to see what you think, if something like that would work, if you were thinking about something totally different. Sorry. I realized I have way too many things open. Here we go. Oh, and you can see on the screen, of course, it doesn't matter what I share. I need to request some support from IT. I'm not sure why we are having, this is the second meeting in a row, we are having technical difficulties. I'm gonna read, it's not extensive. So every time we as city staff put together a presentation and the report to City Council, we have a certain criteria that we use and follow. And so we always start with what's the direction that's needed. So what's the goal? What are we looking for from input from City Council? In this case would be probably the board, right? Then the second one is what is our recommendation as staff proposing that. And then we perceive the third item is to provide a background on that item. So provide you the history and whatnot. And then the fourth item is to provide an analysis of that item, right? So whether if it's the capital improvement plan, just go through like a process of what are the pros and cons, and moving forward with the options proposed with the recommendation, and then to look for options like we can move in one direction or in another, or most often we ask city council to also say, you can tell us maybe a third option that we didn't think about. You can direct us in a different direction. And then we also do an impact on what's the financial policy and community impact, if an item is being adopted or not. And then we propose timing and next steps. So to me, that is a comprehensive report that also exists already, and we could have the same request from city staff, or we can add something. We can consider adding an equity criteria if we wanted, in terms of thinking about what's the impact on disadvantaged communities. But I thought I would bring it up to you for discussion. You can also ask them to walk through the equity framework, or you can choose to do that when they present it. So you have a few options. Would love to hear from you. I'm going to stop sharing because you can't see anything there. And I don't believe that anyone online could see. Those online, were you able to see what I was sharing?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So Ray, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I thought that was really helpful to kind of help us get our hands around how we analyze something and how we respond to it. So let's just take the capital improvement plan as an example, because we talked about that for 30 minutes. So we would use that framework to get our thoughts together. So we would explain the background of what the improvement plan was about, but all those other items that you had underneath that, Monica, we would populate and work together to come up with a recommendation for how we would want to present it to the whatever audience that we're targeting. Is that correct?
So actually that would be a request that you would have in advance from any staff who would want to bring an item to the equity board. So let's say we had most recently the capital improvement plan, but sometimes we have the environmental board or the transportation board or other departments coming to you asking for feedback. And so this would be a request from you as a board for staff when they prepare materials for you to go through those items as they prepare your materials.
I see. Okay, I misinterpreted. I thought it was us reacting to something, but it's us requesting specific information for those who want to bring something forward to us. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
I think my concerns and questions was the same as Ray. I was looking more for the reaction and how, yeah.
So I like that. I think that's a good start. So I'm trying to think about what other specific equity related questions would we want them to focus on. And so I do think, that impact category should be a little bit more like who is most impacted positively or negatively. So wanting to have them unpack the impact for different groups. I think, and some of those groups are named in the equity framework. And then to me, there's also this element around process equity and like how did they think through to make a recommendation, and did they involve different levels of city staff or different community members in arriving at the recommendation or the options that they're suggesting. So I'm not sure how one helps explain that, you know, so I mean, I think is the challenge here.
But I think that's the background prior history of the recommendation, because I think community engagement is important. And so I think somewhere in there it'd be nice, I think, especially as they're presenting to the equity board, where we are really concerned about who all gave feedback and, you know, spoke into this. And so I would love to see what was in community engagement and what, not just who is going to be impacted and saying them thinking who's going to be impacted by it, but also before all of this was done, did they reach out to those communities, different communities, to see what they thought about it?
Right.
So.
And I love what you said, Lorna, and I think that that perhaps responds to your concern and raise, because this could be then your answer, right? If they follow that initial criteria with the script, and perhaps, so this is an opportunity for you as a board to educate and help implement an equity lens throughout the organization. So perhaps staff are not yet aware, and so maybe in the background they will tell you, but maybe you're gonna see that they did not do a community engagement. So that could be your response and your questions in educating them, like, have you considered doing this when you did community engagement, or are you doing, right?
Because that's what I feel like when they present to us, that's where I always am going towards. And so it would be nice for them to start, but I also recognize that sometimes they don't even know who to go to ask before they even started all of this.
Right.
So I can see that coming at either end.
Both, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you, Lorna. Lucrecia?
Yes, I think that our ultimate goal, going back to when this board was created, and when we've had discussions around, you know, what the expectations are, the ultimate goal is for the various departments, the various committees, the various boards that exist to be able to do all of this on their own, correct? To be able to have representation, which is one of my primary concerns, representation on these boards and these committees and these commissions, to ensure that various voices are at the table and those who are not at the table are taken into consideration. And so I just want to remind us and remind, you know, the council of our charge, which is to use this equity tool to hold ourselves accountable and responsible, so that at some point, you know, in 2050 or whenever, hopefully sooner, you know, our board doesn't need to exist because we exist within the different commissions and boards already. Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I have a question for all of you. Would you like us to ask any staff or other departments to, when they prepare materials, for you to go through the equity framework prior to, and perhaps in their packet, in their material, to respond or to speak on how they implemented or how they applied the equity framework? And with that, my question is, if they didn't, are they still welcome to come to you?
I think the answer is both, but I think if I was presenting to a group, I would want to do my homework. And so knowing that they're presenting to our group and we are going to ask, and I think very often, without even looking at this, we're naturally asking those kinds of questions. So I would, before I present to someone, I would want to have my homework done and be ready to answer those questions. So if they want to do a presentation, they should come prepared. And if they don't come prepared, the answer is we will be asking, so be ready to answer those questions in either case. So I don't think you can ever force someone to be prepared, but it was a strong recommendation that be ready, that the equity board will ask questions. And sometimes we might not go on script with these questions. And sometimes their answer might be like, oh yeah, we did this, but it doesn't actually match. And so it's, as Lucrecia said, it's going to be our educating and guiding them so that they are automatically, those groups are asking those questions on their own.
So Lorna, you were looking that way, but you got a lot of thumbs up and high fives as you were talking. Yeah, I think there's some merging. What I'm hearing is kind of as they write the memo to be bringing in the reflections from the equity framework questions, maybe into those sections, like it should be integrated into how they respond to those prompts.
Okay.
Any other comments or thoughts? I don't know if we're covering that too quickly or not, but.
No, I think this is very helpful. I see, Christine.
Yeah, Christina.
Creo que sería bueno tener una matriz de proyectos dividida por cada una de las comisiones. Entonces podríamos hacer como un checklist para ver si ellos están cumpliendo con con nuestros requerimientos de equidad, ¿no? O sea, a la vez llevar ese seguimiento.
I think that perhaps we should have like a checklist of the things that they have done and followed, and the things they've done to follow through to implement things that have to do with the frame of equity. I think that would be very helpful for us too.
Great suggestion, yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Christina. Let's see, any other comments in the room or remote?
Okay, thank you, board members. So I think I'm just gonna use that example of report that we are already using, incorporate the equity framework, and then have perhaps a final document so then we can share with staff coming to you. Does that sound good for everyone?
That sounds good.
Awesome, thank you.
And Christina, do you have another comment, or is that your hand from before? Okay. Okay, and with that, I think we're ready to move on to the next agenda item, which is work plan updates. And it will be presented by Monica.
Thank you again. It's a different type of meeting. I think we had so many meetings back to back when we had guests from outside. So this is the first meeting in a while when we don't have guests from outside. So I wanted to follow up with you. As promised, I am putting the active document on online with our work plan items. But in particular, I wanted to touch base a little bit with you about the equity board proposed work plan items, the 4 large work plan items that we have scheduled for this year. You should have received from me an email earlier this week about inviting you to sign up to serve on a subcommittee for one of those items. I just got kicked out of SharePoint here. I had the SharePoint document pulled up and it just kicked me out. And now it does not recognize my password apparently. I know that I checked the list earlier today and I had Priti and Elisa signed up for an item. I just wanted to remind you all, if you have time and capacity, please let me know. I think the next step, once we have board members signed up to serve on a committee, then we will start scheduling meetings internally with the economic development staff, with the police department. Also for those who don't necessarily need input from other departments, we will just schedule a separate meeting to start doing research on the bias, for example, and so forth. So I'm excited to start working on that. And then if you feel that it's absolutely you don't need to serve on a subcommittee, if you don't have capacity, just let me know so then we don't wait assuming wrongfully that, oh, maybe you didn't have time to sign up. So either way, would love to have your participation, but completely understand already attending meetings, it's a pretty big commitment. So I think that's what I had for that. I don't know if anyone has any questions about the work plan items or any other comments, feedback.
So I'm hearing a reminder to go to Monica's email and go to the link to sign up if you have capacity to pick up one of these work plan projects.
Yes.
And, okay. And I'm not seeing anyone with work plan related questions.
Okay, no, me neither.
Okay.
So I just then wanted to talk about next meetings really quick, and it's still related to work plan items, if I may. So just a reminder, we do have scheduled a joint meeting with the Human Services Commission for March 15.
Is that confirmed?
It is confirmed as a meeting. I have not heard, I'm waiting to hear from all of you on who can make it in person and who can make it virtually. Last time when we checked, we did have quorum to have that happen, but I have not heard back from everyone after my last outreach to all of you. So if we don't have quorum, then we won't have it. But right now we have it scheduled for March 15. And so that's also another reminder. If you didn't have a chance to get back with me on that, please do so. Otherwise, I will start probably calling you and texting you individually in the next couple of days. So the goal of that meeting really would be to really cover, it's going to be an all human services focused meeting, cover everything and providing updates and what the human services staff are doing and Human Services Commission. So it's focused on human services. Then the next meeting, the next regular meeting for you, it's going to be April 5th. That's the first Wednesday in April. And that will be focused on, if you recall, you had you wanted to hear from our Human Resources Department to see how the equity framework implementation is going on internally. So updates from the internal equity work. So we had confirmed the HR department there. We also, I think we are going to start on the, we should have hear back, as we talked earlier today, from the capital improvement process, but also the comprehensive plan for the city that it's up for renewal this year. You should probably hear from them as well in terms of next steps for the comprehensive plan. So pretty big items, all from other departments coming up in April.
So then we should confirm our participation, attendance at both meetings.
Yes, I think again, that would be great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments for me?
Do you think there's going to be a meeting in mid-April?
I don't foresee, I don't think so. We should hopefully get back to just monthly meetings. I have not had any requests for. Now, I think if we do not have quorum for the meeting on March 15, then probably we can look at rescheduling that meeting if you're still interested in having a joint meeting with the Human Services Commission. So then we can look at other dates at that time.
I think I'd already said no, that I couldn't attend March 15th because I have an event that day. So I'm just wondering if that
Do you
was
want to hear
confirmed.
from others?
Sure, if you can let
yeah.
me know now.
Yeah, I can't be there. I'm on a plane.
Okay.
So for folks on the remote, I forget, go-to meeting? Yeah. Can you let us know if you're able to attend the March 15th joint meeting with the Human Services Commission right now? So Lucrecia can.
Yes, I can.
Ray can, okay. Elisa can, okay. And how about you, Christina?
I need to check and confirm. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And you put it?
And I can make it. Yes.
Yes.
Do you want to do an attendance check for April 5th as well?
Sure.
Okay, can we go around and do April 5th? Are folks available April 5th? Okay, Lucrecia is, Kelly, Lorna, Elisa, Ray, and Christina, do you need to check on that one as well? I will.
Yes, I'm checking.
Okay, thanks.
And then Pretty, you're not able on April 5th, but yes, for March 15th. Okay, so we do have quorum for April 5th. Right now, I don't have quorum for March 15th because I only have 4 yeses, but we also don't have everyone present. So I will circle back with folks and then I'll send out an email either way. Okay.
One thing I'm remembering, if we were to go back to the criteria for items needing board input, when you were first talking, I was actually thinking about it a different way, and I think it was something that Kelly had mentioned before, and it reminded me when we were talking about the board meeting, like the criteria for having hybrid meetings and setting up those rules. It seemed like there was an opportunity for the equity board to weigh in on policies, like broadly for the city and those things. Like we could make recommendations about what is a more equitable policy for board and commission meetings, and then pass it on to the other board and commissions for them to customize kind of based on their interests. So I was originally thinking it was going to be about that topic, and I don't know if that's something we want to talk about, maybe bring back at a later date.
And help me understand, for the policy on virtual attendance or just policy in general?
Like the virtual attendance. That was the example I was thinking of. Like, if we have an opportunity to rethink the way the city is doing something based on something that could be more inclusive, it seems like those would be good opportunities for us to participate in.
And so I know that one of the feedbacks that you provided at that time was that perhaps the policy could come to you before being sent to all the other boards and commissions, right? Yeah. So is that what you're thinking about, creating a checklist or a criteria, or providing just that feedback? Or I'm trying to understand what are we?
So those would be some of the types of items that I could see coming to the equity board. So I know right now it feels more like, there was a an engagement toolkit that came out, so they want, which is great. Like, we want the equity board to, provide input, but I think there's some, broader policy discussions that might be, that could benefit from having some deeper equity conversations ahead of being rolled out.
Oh, before creating the draft and coming to you, right? Yes. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And how would you like to go about that? Or what would you like to do as a board?
I think my question would be, how do we identify which ones come to us?
Right.
Because when you say that, it makes me a bit nervous, because I'm like, whoa, we could be here all day for a couple of days if we're looking at different policies coming up. So how do we narrow and identify which ones we'd like to review? So is it just like a list of ones and we can scan them and say, hey, Monica, can we look at this next time? And so you can send it to us in a draft form, and we mention, like, say, let's talk more about this.
And this actually makes me think of creating the work plan. So for the first time this year, what we tried to do was, or what I tried to do as staff, as the city created the citywide budget and work plan, then I tried to check in with different departments and say, this was back in October, November, right? And say, hey, I'm starting to work on the equity board's work plan for 2023. What are some of the items that you have on your work plan for next year, and where is their interest in coming? So that was kind of like a first attempt of saying, hey, collaboratively, where's the interest? So that's how we had, right, from the ADA and transportation and environmental and the comprehensive plan. So those were things that got added to our list. And then we as a board came up with our own. I think this is a good time for us to start thinking about it. And for next year, as the upcoming months, I can't believe we're already talking about April. So it's June, July, August are, I think, really good times for us to start thinking for next year on how do we want to just review the work plan for 2024 citywide, and you as board start selecting what you would like to do and prioritize. Again, this time it was just a transitional, let's start somewhere.
I think having like a list and then we can identify saying, hey, what's going on with this might help us, because I don't think some people might always think that we should, like,
right.
And then it's like, hey, no, this is something really that should have been addressed and analyzed with a lens of equity.
Yes.
How is it done now?
Oh, in terms of equity, or how are things done?
Yes,
or the work plan?
I guess maybe it's not for today, but I think that what I would like to know is, how does a policy become a policy in this organization? That's what I don't know. And then we can talk about, where do we fit? Right?
What's the review process?
Yes. Yes.
Or could we automatically be slated in it?
Yes.
That's a great question. So I can go back to the administration and ask and see who might be a great staff person to come and present and educate us on that. And then once you understand what the current process is, then you can help inform where you can.
And also they could make a recommendation, you know, it would be good if they put thought into it.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, this is some of that, the hidden system, or like the way things are that no one ever thinks about or revisits. And so how do we make those things bubbles so they're visible and can be examined? So that would be, Okay, that's a great question. I'm gonna do my homework. I know that from my perspective, I think it's in each department. Okay, we need a policy on this, or we go to city council for a policy, but you're right, I'm not sure exactly like, is there a streamlined process for everything, for every single policy? And is it consistent? Is it the same?
Yeah.
We know that city council adopts policy, they are the policy makers, and we as city administration, we go and propose draft policies, but how and where it starts. And if it's the same for every department and every section and sector that we touch, I'm not sure. Great questions.
Any comments or questions from folks in the go-to meeting?
I see Christina shaking her hand.
Okay. I think, are we ready to move on to the next agenda topic, which is the staff report?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So for staff report, I just had, we already actually talked, I wanted to talk to you about the joint meeting in March. Just a quick reminder, you have heard from me already this time, but just one quick reminder about the board terms expiring at the end of April. So all the terms expiring, they expire at the end of April. New terms begin in May. So if you're one of the members that your term expires, and if you didn't have a chance yet to resubmit your application and you're interested in continuing on the board, please do so. Also, if you're a board member who may not find themselves able to continue next year, please do let me know. And so that's the second reminder that I had. And the third and last is just a brief update. As human services staff, we recently went to the City Council Committee for Services, Safety and Parks to request additional rental assistance funds, a one-time allocation for those who are still have impacts from the post-pandemic. We learned from the community that we still have quite a few residents who are behind in rent, especially those who have been on payment plans. Not only they had the regular rent that they needed to pay, but they had the extra, and some they still struggle with that. And then some of our nonprofits have, not some, all of them actually, have seen a decrease, significant decrease in donations that they receive from private entities typically. So with all of that need, we went with a proposal to request additional funds for those impacted, especially low-income residents. And we will go back to the larger city council for approval on March 20th.
Monica, how has do you collect data on how many low-income families, and how has that number changed over the past 4 years?
On how the number of low-income families changed. We don't have necessarily that granular level data yet. Usually we just use census level data for the number. Where we have some numbers is we are in contact on an ongoing basis with landlords and with different multifamily, so the rental complexes, and they give us data on how many total units they have, and from the total units, how many of those are still behind in rent and how many are low income. So for example, we learned that one of the largest low income multifamily unit up in the Highlands, the YWCA Family Village, 42% of their units are still behind in rent. So that's how we learn. 42% of the units are still behind in rent, and the average number of rent that they are behind is about 5. So that's how we learned, but we don't, like at the population level from the 40,000.
So how do we get that kind of data? Because you're saying that donations are low, there's funding needed, but how do we find out, has the low-income need increased?
Yes.
Post-pandemic, how do we get that data to show that? I just want to know.
Another great question. Yes, thank you for that. Another great question. So we know that from our nonprofit partners who provide emergency financial assistance. So they provide us data. We contract with them. We give them grants, and they provide reports for us on how many people they serve each quarter and each month, and how many more people are requesting help from them.
And how does that number compare, like from 2018-19 versus, I mean, really can't still compare to last year with just
so
maybe 22-23.
Another great one. So they've seen an increase during the pandemic, and then the pandemic years, and then now they don't see the decrease. Actually, it continues to increase. So
before the pandemic, it was already on the rise. It rose substantially, most likely.
So let's say if we have the pre-pandemic years as the baseline, there was always a need, right? But perhaps there was a baseline, then it increased during the pandemic, and now post-pandemic, it's not decreasing. It continues to increase. So for example, the most recent data, and I think actually I have it here from my council presentation, but St. Vincent de Paul, one of the 2 nonprofits here locally, just in the last or for 2 weeks in February, the need that they saw, it was equivalent to the past 6 months that they had. So just growing needs, which I think also we presented some more information to City Council, but it seems like it's a combination of inflation that is just now starting to, again, as people initially had less buying power, then inflation caused rents to increase. And so then now people are just staying more and more behind because they had already the payment plans, then inflation, then raises, so they just can't keep up.
Ray, I know you had your hand up a moment ago. Did you still have a question or comment?
I didn't want to minimize that conversation, so if the other question is more appropriate. I had a question about our terms and membership. So
Sure.
if it's okay to ask that, I can, but I wanted the other question to come up first.
You know, Lisa has her hand up.
Okay, hey, well, let's put a pause for your question for a second to see if Elisa had wanted to continue on where we're going.
Sure, just a quick question about the statistics. So, Monica, you said 42% of the YMCA in Highlands are behind in rent. And I think what you said is that the average delinquency is 5 months. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what we were told.
Okay. And so we know that number as of today. Do we, and it kind of goes back, kind of dovetails with the questions that were being asked in the room, is do we have those numbers from the same source over time? Because
Yes.
I hear, okay, because what I heard you talking about were the nonprofits and how they're having more people come to them, but it wasn't really clear if we're tracking those percentages from the landlords over time.
Yes, so we do have, thank you, Lisa, for that question. So we do have the information from the nonprofits who provide rental assistance and emergency financial assistance for the past several years. And then from the landlords directly, we started reaching out to them every 6 months or so during the pandemic. So it's not as long as going back to 2018, but we have that from landlords for just the past couple of years. Thank you for that question.
How do you share this data with nonprofits, for the school district? Is that something that we share?
We don't share it with the school district. We have it, though we have the data available from the nonprofits, but we don't share it with the school district. We certainly can if it's helpful.
This is where we need a local paper, right? This is a story that's not being told.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, because it feels like I wish I had known, like I'm struggling and this is crosswork now. And so it's something that we need to talk about as a community. And that would help have a better understanding of what our need is. And we're talking about equity, we're an equity board, but this information is lacking in the general community as to what's going on, because there's this general idea that Issaquah is a very affluent community, and we need to retell the story that it is changing. And we can't hide from that. And there's, I think, some shame associated with that it's changing, but it shouldn't be, because that really is part of growth. Because if numbers are going down in enrollment, part of it is because cost of living is so much higher, people can't afford to move in, but in between there's the fact that people can afford their rents, and in some areas, like, is there a connection between all of that? And so there's definitely a story, and I didn't think about the lack of newspaper, but then who tells the story? So that, I think that's one of the things we've also talked about as our job in equity, is having these conversations to help people understand what's going on, so that when decisions are made, there's an understanding and not a bias and perspective.
Thank you. And I think even that's why I think, and I wish you were there, like the meeting, the joint meeting with the Human Services Commission, I think we would focus all on like just informing you on all the other things and everything else that we are doing in human services. And sometimes as a staff who is a liaison to both boards, the Human Services Commission and the Equity Board, I feel like sometimes there's, on your end, there's missing information that you have, that it's, to me, sometimes it would be so valuable to be more connected, because in human services, that's all we do. We do work with folks who are, low income, unhoused. And yes, sometimes it's surprising and it's hard. Like, we have data saying, okay, 7.8% of the population is Issaquah lives in poverty. And actually that it's a pretty high number to me. And then when you bring it down to actual numbers of people, those are quite a few thousands of people who live in poverty in our community. So anyway, I'm gonna shut up. I know Lucrecia and Elisa have their hands up.
Yeah, I think Elisa had her hand up first.
Yeah, very, very quickly, I just wanted to say, in addition to what was brought up about how do we communicate that to the community, that and also communicate how does the community help. So I hear those numbers, but then I don't personally know where to go, what to do in order to help with that problem. So I think it's communicating in both the problem and also suggestions for ways that we can help.
Thanks for that comment. And Lucrecia?
I would like to know if, Monica, if there is a way where when issues do come up that you feel are need more of a cross committees, commission, board participation, if there's a some way that we can formalize so that when you identify that or anyone else identifies that that communication starts to happen between the board and the commissions, right? Because I mean, obviously we can't attend every commission or other board meetings, but it would be nice, like you were identifying, when you see something or hear something, is it possible for you to let us know?
No. Thank you, Lucrecia. And I think that's why like proposing the joint meeting was for me like a first step and almost like laying the foundation and really just trying to hear from both boards to see if there's interest in continuing that collaboration and partnership. And we'll see how that grows organically. And we can certainly, I think there will be like times that we can predict. There are sometimes things that come up very fast and it's harder to predict and plan. But perhaps we could just have some regular joint meetings, maybe once a quarter to begin with, or something like that. But I would love that, and I do see that valuable. I did find myself quite a few times when I went to the Human Services Commission with one thing, and I thought, oh, it would be great for the Equity Board, or the other way around. But especially, yes, since we have a Human Services Commission, we try to keep human services specific items for them. But I think it would be valuable to have you there as well. So great input and suggestions.
Yeah, and I'm reflecting on, Lorna, your comment around, does the school district know this data? Because when we know there's like financial insecurity and stressors, like with money, that contributes to like abuse and other behaviors in the household, which impacts students, partners, and things like that. And so it just has all these spillover consequences. And by having siloed boards and commissions, we don't necessarily think across those things very well, or we're not designed to address those things more across those lines.
And thank you for that, and both of you. At a granular level, I can tell you, again, in human services, as we have now a behavioral health and homeless outreach and community court program, we do see often individual at a very confidential or a very granular level. We see families who are in the school district that either they just like you said, now they're involved with the law because there was a domestic violence situation that was just increased because of often just lack of money, and we see that full circle coming up. We work directly with unhoused families in the district. Yes,
Is there any collaboration? Is there any monthly or quarterly meeting with agencies like we're talking about in the city of Issaquah?
So the school district does meet with human services every 3 months, but not on the level of sharing names or anything.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
I know recently we did not have yet a first meeting, but there is a first meeting scheduled between some of the city staff and some of the school district staff from the middle school and high school. I don't think that we are there yet as far as sharing names, right? But then just trying to address some common trends that we have seen. We'll see where that's gonna go. But I think that's also the challenges in the school district cannot share names due to confidential. There are certain things that you cannot, but then we should be able to find ways to work with one another.
Because it feels like both sides are seeing issues and they're like, and so how do we get to that happy medium of we're sharing and coordinating support strategies? Because it's not about blaming, it's just about both sides are trying to find ways to find solutions, but we're not connecting.
So I was thinking like a higher where you're sharing that overall data, right? Like you were sharing, so that it spreads more through Issaquah, through people who care about that, right? So for example, and maybe I'm not gonna use the right name, but Bellevue has a coalition, it's not the right name, of groups that are working towards equity and better education in Bellevue. And it has a massive amount of groups that have been active. I don't know if it's still active or not. I used to be a part of it with my job. Do you know if that is effective in communicating out information? Are you aware of this? Because I'm a little out of date, 4 years out of date. And so, but if that's what it needs, that's not impossible to do.
Yeah. And there are local groups. We do meet with organizations on a regular basis.
It's a Nourishing Network.
Okay.
But it's not on the same level as the Bellevue organization you're talking about, because the Bellevue organization included Bellevue Schools Foundation. The city included a lot more. So the Nourishing Network is the food bank and a whole bunch of faith organizations and different support service organization, but it's at a different level than what Bellevue had, because I attended one of the Bellevue meetings. And
I know that during the pandemic, we had quite a few collaborative meetings that were focused on food, and those were very, very effective and powerful. And we did say that we wanted to continue those, and just having one focused on behavioral health and food and other items. We just did not have the staffing, but I think that is an opportunity for the future, hopefully now being fully staffed to convene, and that can be a role for us as a city. We can convene those and be more active in coordinating and collaborating, trying to share that data. Christina's hand up.
Christina.
Wow, dieron en un punto muy importante, cómo analizar los datos. Me ha tocado trabajar en bases de datos previamente y es algo difícil de entender cuando no se tiene un concepto bien establecido. Es decir, estamos hablando de pobreza, pero ¿cómo se está evaluando la pobreza? ¿Y esto va a cambiar? Ok.
Perdón, pausa. So as far as databases, I've had a lot of experience coordinating databases, and the important point is what baseline you're using to determine. For example, if we're talking about poverty level, what exactly are we talking about when we're talking about families in poverty? Adelante.
Porque, por ejemplo, para lo que, no sé, una fundación puede solamente evaluar 3 cosas para decir que estas familias son pobres, otra fundación puede evaluar 4, pero otra fundación puede evaluar solamente una. Entonces, a lo que quiero llegar, okay, go ahead.
Because it may be that one foundation is analyzing 3 points for determining a poverty level, where another foundation is analyzing 4 points or 5 points. So what is the common ground for determining poverty, for example? And adelante.
El punto es, si no tenemos bien claros los datos, no vamos a poder avanzar como sociedad. Tenemos que enfocarnos en eso y es triste decirlo, pero es una realidad.
So my point is, if we, as far as the data that we're focusing on, if we don't have the data clearly in mind, there's never going to be progress made. I mean, it's a sad reality, but it's the reality.
Estamos caminando en negro a la oscuridad.
You know, we're just trying to get through darkness, blackness. We can't see where we're going if we don't know what we're talking about in common.
Gracias, Cristina. Thank you so much for that. And actually, your comments and suggestion gave me some great ideas for how to help inform some of the information that we'll be presenting at the joint meeting. Because yes, we do gather the same set of data from all our nonprofit organizations, but would love that opportunity to like inform you a little bit more on what kind of contract and what are the pros in some of the data that we gather, and then also what are some of the cons and frustrations that I personally have. Point well made, and you're absolutely right. We need to have consistent data throughout to be able to make sure that we compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges, for sure. So thank you for that. Well said. Okay.
Okay. Any other
I
comments?
would like to say something. Maybe I can go with you some days. When my childs are on the school, maybe I can go with you. I don't know if it is okay, but just I'm busy on March, but I'll be free in April, so I am open to go. If
Thank
it's
you so
okay and I can help in another way, I'll be there.
Thank you, Christina. So you're not going to be able to make the March 15 meeting, right? That's what you're saying. Right. Okay. Yes, I see. Okay.
And Lucrecia.
I wanted to ask Lorna for clarification with regards to being able to identify our families who may be struggling financially. And I want to know if the free reduced program data, free reduced food program data, is that not something that could be used to identify the families internally?
No, that's exactly what we use, but it hasn't changed. And so that's something that's been confusing me.
Yeah.
Because I personally am having a disconnect, because I thought the numbers would have increased or have been increasing in the past couple of years, but the free and reduced data since 2018 has stayed flat. And so that's what I'm very confused about, and I'm trying to find out how that compares with the city, and like, what am I missing? Because I feel like I'm missing I feel like, not me, I mean, I feel like something's wrong, but I don't know what it is, because what my feeling is based on who I'm working with is not matching the data. And so I don't know why.
Right. Now that you point that out, it is alarming. I'm glad I asked the question, because it does beg to ask. The only thing that I can think of is that where people may have difficulty paying their rent, they may still not qualify, because like if we're being really honest, to qualify for some of these poverty guidelines, they're based on poverty levels of the 70s, right? And so even if you're struggling financially in today's world, if we're using, criteria where people are not being caught, then that probably explains why, right? Meaning like you can't pay rent, but you don't qualify for free and reduced lunch.
And that goes to Christina's point, right? Like, what points are they using for the criteria? So being poor in Issaquah or struggling financially in Issaquah is maybe different than struggling financially in, let's say, Federal or Auburn, where the rent prices are different. So is that a factor? Like, what are some of the factors where I hear about so many families struggling or feel like I'm seeing more in the past few years, but the data is not showing that. So are we not, like, where is it? Where's the discrepancy is my question.
Right.
I have one
Thank you,
thought,
Lorna.
but I see Lisa first.
Okay, oh, Alisa?
A question. The free and reduced data we're talking about is, so question, I guess. I have not had a child go through the Washington State Public Schools, so I'm not 100% sure how the free and reduced lunch data gets collected. In New Jersey, where my child went, the paperwork was optional for parents to fill out, and oftentimes didn't get filled out, either because they were complex or because people didn't think that they would qualify or maybe think that it was worth it. So I'm curious whether the data is collected in a similar way, whether it's optional for parents to fill that information out.
And on top of that, the confusion this year is that because it was free for 2 years, I don't know if everyone filled it out this year, and if that's the case. So it's, that's what I'm suspecting, but I have no data because there's no data for 2 years. And then this year, it's showing no change.
Yeah. And then to adding to what Elisa was saying, I was wondering if the stigma might be also higher, especially in a school setting, where kids
Are so affluent.
are so affluent.
Very.
Right.
And also what Lisa said is, in talking to a couple families, they didn't know that they should even apply. They didn't know that they could qualify. So there's a lot of unknown. So I don't know. I don't know who, I mean, I can't go up to the person and say, hey, I don't know, you might qualify. Can you please fill this out? Like,
yeah. And yes, as all of you had said, I think in a family who's struggling, I think they probably might be more likely to reach out for rental assistance or for other ways before reaching out to the school for assistance.
Or realizing they could have still applied at some point.
Great conversation for members. Thank you for all of those comments.
So I know we're near the end of our meeting. We've got other business and announcements. And I'm not seeing any from Monica. Does anyone else have other things to bring up?
I had that question about the membership because that was one of the ones that Monica brought up earlier. So I'm looking at the roster, and we lost Megan, and we don't have Jacob anymore as junior members. And I think I've posed this before. Has there been attempts to get that? Because I think it's really important to have that lens in our committee, the youth lens. And Lorna, I thought that at some point there was a relationship that you might have had with the school that we can make this position visible, maybe get interest from there. If not, I was going to maybe ask my daughter.
I think,
yeah.
And I think there are a couple groups. So there's like an equity board group, and I think there was some reasons why we hadn't approached them. But there's also the Issaquah High School Care Group that I can approach. But I'm wondering, actually, in listening and hearing about the garage, have we asked Kaylee at the garage to share that information with the students in the garage?
It's a great thought. We didn't share with the garage other than just sharing broadly, but that is something that definitely I can follow up with. We reached out to other youth advisory boards.
Because I think the garage would be one place, because the students have been very active and leaders in some of their work, and so I think the garage would be a great place. And the Issaquah High School could also be, and I can reach out to them and ask.
Yeah, as a parent, I get announcements from them all the time. If there's a way that they can incorporate that, there's this position that's open for those who have interest in this area with equity. Maybe reach out to you or Monica and go from there to broaden the message.
Yeah, and I know I used to.
Sorry, go ahead, Monica.
No, go ahead, Lucrecia.
Oh, I just wanted to jump in and say that I would like to also ask that we do a concerted effort to reach out to the students who participate in the Running Start program, because students who are already kind of like seeking something different are self-motivated in my mind and might be interested in something like what we're offering.
Thank you, Lucrecia.
Monica, if you have some kind of blurb or something written, share with me, I can send it to the Issaquah High School Care Organization.
Thank you. I'll follow up with you with an email or no.
Thank you.
Great suggestions. Thank you.
So a follow-up question. I was thinking the applications closed February 28th. So do folks know that they're still able to apply beyond that date?
Yes, we can certainly. I checked in with the chief of staff. We can certainly, and that's why I wanted to circle back with the chief of staff who's coordinating all the recruitments to see how many applications we had for youth members. And if we did not have enough applications, then we can certainly request, and that goes just also for regular board members, but especially with youth, if we didn't have applicants or we didn't have enough applicants, then we can, there's that flexibility. So, okay, again, we have between now and the end, mid-March, well, that's already mid-March, I want to say April, when they go to city council to continue recruitment.
Okay. Great. And then anything else for the good of the order? Okay, so I guess this is when we adjourn.
Yes,
I don't know the official rules
here.
I raised my hand at the last minute, Preeti.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to thank you and commend you for a great job leading our meeting tonight. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Okay, and with that, thank you, Lucrecia. Who adjourns?
You adjourn. You can adjourn
okay.
the meeting at 7:50.
I adjourn the meeting at 7:50. Thank you all and have a great evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good evening. Have a good evening, board members.
Thank you so much, everybody.